I wanted to give a little bit of background about myself simply because I didn't start in cybersecurity. I suppose like many people, I came to cyber a little bit backwards, but I have been a lifelong educator. And it really is exciting to me to talk about this topic because it's a way for me to use both my cybersecurity training and experience along with all of this educational background. And it's really, I'm happy to be able to share this with you because they do partner together so very well. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the background and why this is an issue, some theoretical foundations that really support human risk management and the goals, and then how human risk management can truly drive behavioral change. And then we'll take a little bit of a look ahead. And I know we don't have bunches of time, so we're going to get right to it. Thank you so much for being here today, by the way. So what we know, depending on which study you read, 88 to 95% of data breaches are caused by human error. And that number has not significantly changed in 2 decades. So we know that attackers factor in psychological principles when they are sending out phishing emails or, trying to weasel their way in. They are using all of those things that help make it work, that sense of urgency, a sense of fear, doing it while people are trying to get out the door for the day. And they're really effective. That's why they use them. So we need to as well. We know traditional security awareness training has not been effective. And we know that we have to do something different and move beyond just security awareness. What we really need to focus on is behavioral change from our employees. So let's talk a little bit about those theoretical foundations that truly are built into human risk management. The first one is, let me back up, there we go. The first one is adult learning theory, and it's also known as andragogy, but it focuses on the ways that are unique to adults learning rather than just how children learn, because they are different. Adults have a much stronger sense of self-concept. They know what they bring to the table. They understand that their knowledge is important and their experiences factor in, and they can respect that about other people that they may be collaborating with. Real life experience is also incredibly important to them. So they want to be respected for the knowledge that they bring, and they want their learning to be applicable to their real life experiences as well. They also have a very problem-centered orientation to learning. So it's going to be important to them to have some issue that they're trying to solve or a workplace difficulty that needs to be resolved. And if they can apply their learning in some way to make their job easier and to solve a problem, they're even more excited about it and more willing to engage in that learning. They certainly have a different readiness to learn than many students. Obviously, they've brought themselves to that table. They're not mandated by law to be there. They typically want to learn what it is that you're trying to teach them. And they tend to be much more internally motivated. They're excited about learning something new typically. So if we can give them information in a way that's engaging and relevant, they're going to do well. The other principles that are included are based in behavioral psychology. So behavioralism is the theory that focuses on observable behaviors and the way they can be shaped by stimulus or reinforcement. So for cybersecurity, what that means is that an organization might implement a reward system where employees are entered into a prize drawing for reporting phishing emails, or if somebody has dropped their risk score by 10% over the past 30 days, then they get entered or get some sort of recognition, right? And being able to incorporate, positive stimuli in particular really does help change behavior. Cognitive load theory is also a really important factor. And what this says is that the working memory of the brain only has so much capacity at any given time. So if it's really important to make sure that any training that you're trying to add to that workload is really relevant, that it's specific to their needs, and that it's delivered at a time when it's not their busiest season of the year. Like, you would not want to provide cybersecurity training to an accountant between the months of February and April, right? So we want to make sure that that is really factored in and when is a good time to do any kind of training, and then make sure it's delivered in manageable chunks. You know, this should not be hours and hours long. People are not going to be able to sit there and sit through it. The next one is constructivism. So this theory emphasizes that learning is an active, constructive process, and that employees are going to learn best when they can relate their new information to their existing knowledge base. So they're really building upon what they already know. They're able to connect that new learning to pieces that they've already had in place and tasks that they can already do. And it is a much more effective way for adults to learn. Social learning theory is a theory by Bandura, and it posits that people learn from one another through observation, imitation, modeling. And this is really important because once you establish a positive culture, that's really going to continue to snowball. This is just the way things are here. This is the way we behave. This is the culture that we maintain. And people then can see everyone else in the environment doing that, and they just conform to it and do it as well. And I think it's really important to make a little side note here that having leadership buy-in is incredibly important for this piece. People need to see that leaders are doing this as well. And okay, so if they're doing it, I obviously need to do this too. That modeling piece is incredibly important. And then the last one I wanted to talk a little bit about is motivation theory. So really understanding what motivates your employees. So for example, if you're at all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what that says for young students is that if they are coming to school without having eaten, without having a sense of security at home that they're safe, they're not going to be able to come to school and then worry about something not nearly as important like learning. If you're going hungry, you're not going to learn. So what that means in a workplace, though, is that people need to feel secure in their job. They need to feel safe in their work environment. They need to feel like they can speak up and have a voice. So all of those things are very important before you can start adding on additional learning. Briefly, to specifically say, if we want adults to learn and change their behavior, we can't use a security awareness training method that's been used for 2 decades where we're throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks. We've already proven that's not going to change behavior. We absolutely need to include adult learning theory principles and behavioral psychology principles into our adult education pieces if we want them to be successful. So, effective training should be based on all of those things. Self-directed and paced. Make sure that people can get in there, obviously hold them accountable to some sort of schedule, but if they can't get to it right now because of a job task, that should be okay, as long as it gets done. It should be relevant to their job. So instead of this wide training, make it a little more targeted. The people in accounting may not need the exact same training as the people in human resources or as the people that are working the help desk. Everybody probably needs a little bit different training there. And then based on their behaviors, you can send out remedial training, right? Targeted directly towards them. You want it to be engaging. For goodness sakes, how many times, and I wish that I, could see everybody for a show of hands, but how many times have you been asked to sit through a training where there's no engagement? You're not able to interact with either audience members or the speaker, or the instructor, and it's just them talking at you like Charlie Brown the whole time. It's very boring, and people tend to just tune it out. If they're working in their office and trying to do it virtually, they'll let it run and play, but they're probably actually answering emails or something else. So that engagement piece is absolutely critical. We also want to make sure it's a resource to solve problems related to their daily tasks. So make sure that this is something that's incredibly relevant and deliver it in a motivating manner. Make it fun in some way. Make it exciting if they show improvement or if they do this thing. Give them that intrinsic motivation. Show them how they're doing, for example. If we want people to improve, then maybe tell them, hey, this is your baseline. Let's see how far you can get over the next quarter, right? And we know traditional security awareness training does not fit this criteria. So human risk management really can drive behavioral change. When you start combining security training and the pieces that are needed with all of those sound principles, then you can actually affect change. So education and training programs that are engaging and relevant, that will effectively drive change. Communicating clear and consistent messaging about the desired behaviors. This should not be a once a year, checkbox on your compliance sheet. This needs to be clear, consistent messaging. And remember that modeling behavior that you wanted to create. So there should be some sort of incentives rewarding that positive behavior or recognizing those positive changes, making sure that people see, oh yeah, all right, if I do the right thing, I can get a little gold star today. I would love to say that, for my elementary students back a long time ago when I was teaching that, they all loved stickers, and goodness sakes, if they were, a little smelly or a little sparkly or anything like that, it was even better. And adults really aren't all that different. Or an extra shout out and thank you in a staff meeting. Those little things that are super nominal really do still mean something. And role models. So make sure that leadership and peers are demonstrating the desired behavior as well. And I know I've mentioned that a couple of times, but it is so incredibly important. So key components of human risk management, when you think about it from this point of view, are really not that much different than any other risk management, right? You want to make sure that you identify what those risks are. So understand what behaviors or situations are posing a risk. You want to conduct a risk assessment. So in the, what kind of impact are they going to have? What is the likelihood that these things are going to happen? It's the exact same process that you would go through for any other type of human risk, a risk assessment. And then monitoring and reviewing after your risk mitigation. So mitigate those risks, implement strategies, do remedial training for any skills that they've missed. Make sure that you're monitoring to see that improvements have been made, and then continuously track that so you have a very clear picture over time. I think one of the challenges that I see frequently is that people will develop this training plan, but then don't necessarily look at how it is going to be delivered, launched, maintained. So you really do want to make sure you have some sort of system in place. And I know other folks today have talked to you a bit about what those systems can be, but have that system in place so that you can effectively deliver any remedial training that you would need to based on any risky behaviors that people continue to engage in. So effective integration of these strategies needs to include that role-based initial training. make sure that you are getting the people in finance versus the people at the IT desk versus, HR versus your C-suite. They should probably all have different role-based initial training that's very applicable to their job and their daily tasks. Make sure you include real-time data tracking. So determine in advance what behaviors you're going to be tracking, what tools you're going to use in order to track that information. If you're going to use outside vendors, I'm sure a couple people around here could recommend some, but make sure that you've talked with them very thoroughly about what information you're going to be getting back, and then determine how you are actually going to use that with feedback loops, right? Ensure that you have that continuous improvement by regularly reviewing and adjusting strategies based on that data that you're getting. And you want to have remediation strategies in place, including what that content is going to be, how you are going to deliver it, and then how you will track the effectiveness of it afterwards. Once you get this in place, you'll really be able to look at that data over a long period of time and see the evidence of how well it is working with particular individuals, with particular departments, with particular types of incidents, but you'll be able to track all of that and look. So your measurements of success. You're going to have metrics. So tracking those behavioral changes through those particular indicators, such as incidence rates, compliance levels, employee feedback. I would ask them how they're feeling about their current educational programs and maybe get a baseline for that. And then after you've implemented something new, get another measurement and see what the differences are. Really try to get your employees involved in that. Using surveys, observation, data analysis, what method you choose, make sure that you are aggregating that data out of your tech stack and looking at it over time. And then those feedback loops for continuous improvement. Again, you want to have regular reviews and make adjustments based on that data, and then continue moving that bar of measurement of your success. So let's take just a little bit of a look ahead and some challenges and solutions. So some of the common challenges for human risk management can include that it's time consuming. So you want to make sure that you utilize all of the resources in your tech stack and that you are perhaps sourcing out vendors that can help you with this. It really can be much more cost effective to work with outside vendors than trying to manage all of this together and try to pull reports from multiple different places without having a smooth system in place to aggregate it. Your man hours alone can make that a little challenging, which is part of the cost. Now, one of the solutions for the cost, however, is you'll be able to track progress and a decline in errors over time. And that right there is evidence of return on investment. Obviously, it's very difficult to track, well, we didn't spend this much money on some catastrophic error that might have happened, but you can track a decline in errors, which is a pretty good indicator that you're avoiding other financial penalties. It can be difficult to get buy-in. So you want to make sure, particularly with your employees, that this is not set up as something punitive. I can't stress that strongly enough. When you're trying to create a positive cybersecurity culture, you can't just automatically use this type of information in a punitive manner. You need to use it as a training moment, an opportunity to learn, an instance where you can go, oh, great, we've uncovered a problem well before it really could have turned into a full-blown vulnerability. So great, this gives us an opportunity to fix it right now. The employees typically don't want to do a bad job of that. So make sure that this is a chance for them to do a little bit better, to raise up their score, to celebrate their successes with those positive changes that are, of course, going to happen after you do that remedial training. And it can be very difficult, of course, always to implement change. And the argument to that is awfully simple. What we're doing now is not effective. There's case study after case study after case study that you can present to display this is not effective. So we have to do something differently. For future trends, we know that they're going to be leveraging new technologies, AI, machine learning, they're already in full swing. We can mitigate those risks more effectively, but the bad guys have them too. So we got to make sure that we're staying on top of all of that. Integrating HRM with broader risk management strategies will ensure a holistic approach. And I really, truly do believe that this human management, we are right at a precipice where we're going to hit a tipping point and everybody will be moving to a human risk management stance instead of security awareness training as a checkbox on their compliance sheet. So we are getting really close to time here. I wanted to make sure that I tell you,
you know
how to get started.
1:30.
And I was asked to leave 5 minutes for questions at the end.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Apologies.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure everybody's getting what they would like out of it. So the first things that you can do, really develop your HRM team. It's incredibly important that this be a cross-disciplinary team. It should have a variety of stakeholders involved. You really should have somebody there from human resources. You need to have somebody there from IT. You need to have somebody there from management. You're going to need to have leadership buy-in and have them involved as well. So really think through who needs to be on that team for you. And then that team should identify the risky behaviors to monitor, evaluate what systems you're going to use for data collection, and really launch into your human risk assessment. So that's what I had for you today. Very brief, I know. I feel like I could have actually gone in much more depth, but nobody wants to spend that kind of time at the end of a conference day. So what questions can I answer for you?
So you're getting a lot of praise in the chat. No particular questions have come through just yet. Just a reminder, if you guys have questions, dump them in the chat. I'll get you started. You mentioned, adult learning not being too far off from the kids. Do you have a adult version of your sparkly sticker that you use?
That is a great question. Yes. So I, at one point, was an instructor. So teachers are nothing if not a little bit cheesy from time to time. And I made little note cards, just homemade note cards that had a rock on the front and a ruler on the front. And one of them was yelling at the other, "You rock." And the other one yelled, "You rule." Right? So cheesy. But I would just fill that out with a little handwritten note and give that to them. And that meant so much to different people. Obviously, you have to know your employees and what motivates them. For some, it would just be a shout out in public at the next staff meeting. That's what would be really motivating to them. Whereas some others, that may embarrass them. So getting to know your employees a little bit is very helpful. It can be something super simple like that and free. It can be entering into a drawing. It can be, some sort of email thank you to the following list of people that made XYZ improvement, anything like that.
Excellent. I love that. Now you do have a question here, so this might take us to time, but do you recommend any framework or PKI to holistically measure human risk?
Ooh, to holistically measure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really, really broad thing to try to do with one or two specific PKIs. And I'd really take a look at your baseline data and determine where the riskiest behaviors are and try to start there. You're not going to make everything happen all at once. So if you've got a couple of key areas that are showing as super weak, focus there. Phishing links perhaps might be the thing that's the most challenging in your organization right now. So create a PKI specifically around phishing campaigns if you like. But I really would not want to give a standardized answer for that because I think everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different depending on what's happening currently in your environment.